Hey everybody, my printer's low on yellow ink, and you know what that means? That's right, it's time for another talking time-lapse video with me, your good buddy Josh Davenport. As always, these videos and all the comics over on RGBros.com are brought to you by the fine people on Patreon. Patreon.com/Josh Davenport. And that is Brandon, Dan, Vivian, Matt, Mike, and Tobias. Thank you all very much for your continued support. Today, you are supporting the time-lapse video of RGBros Yellow Brick Chode, which in the title of this comic, I spelled it C-H-O-D-E. I looked it up, and because I was wondering which way to spell it. Some people spell it C-H-O-A-D, but so far as I can tell, either way is right. If I'm wrong, fill me in, let me know. I don't want to sound like an idiot, which is impossible to not do when you're me, but, I try my best. So this first frame here is a little wacky. I like the way Baxter and the couch turned out a whole lot. I'm not a huge fan of the way Reggie looks in this first frame, but, if I spent all the time pointing out the flaws that I find in my own work, these videos would be 2 hours long, and they'd just be me complaining. So we're not going to do that. Who am I kidding? I think everything I do is perfect. Just like every other cartoonist out there. But basically this comic is about just the fact that everybody on Earth apparently has their own, story for the Wizard of Oz and how they're going to change the characters. And, in the Wizard of Oz, like I think the original book, not the movie starring Judy Garland, is in the public domain, so anybody can. And so, you get some interesting stuff out of that. But more often than not, you just get absolute garbage out of it. Same with everything else. All art is subjective, so maybe what I think is garbage, you love, but you never know. For every, rousing musical or good novel, there's a bunch of different made-for-TV versions of The Wizard of Oz where somebody's like, what if the Munchkins were a bunch of robots? And you're like, okay. There's no lion. It was lithium-ion batteries. And they thought it said lion. That's my idea. Nobody take it. I'm writing that script tomorrow, sending it to ABC. They will make a series out of it. I promise you. So there's a new one coming out, and I haven't watched it. So maybe it's good, and I just don't know. I can't remember what it's called. Maybe it's just called, Oz, and it's a spinoff of that other Oz show where, people were getting beaten in prison. But this one looks like somebody was like, what if Game of Thrones was in the Wizard of Ozland? And, yeah, that's what it looks like. So it's like people riding across, grassy dunes on horses, giant walls and people in fancy armor. It's just like nothing about this to me says the Wizard of Oz. And granted, I haven't read the 900 other Wizard of Oz books that there are, but I don't know. Maybe it's just because I'm not a gigantic Wizard of Oz fan to begin with that this is a problem for me. So you could be listening to this whole thing being like, you're an idiot, and you're certainly entitled to that opinion. But I don't like it. Get off my lawn. Another thing, I don't know, I didn't bother to look this up yet, but I'm wondering if Peter Pan is also in the public domain, because you get a lot of wacky Peter Pan projects too. And again, look, like I said, with anything like this stuff in the public domain or just older stories and things like that, it's fine to experiment with them. It's just, I think it's because Wizard of Oz has done so much that it annoys the hell out of me. I think that's why it's a problem. But there's plenty of other culprits out there. But there's people doing good stuff with it. Like I said, I've listened to the Wicked soundtrack, and it is wicked awesome. I haven't seen the show. I just haven't had a chance to. Well, I take that back. I had a chance to see it once when I think it was in Philadelphia or something like that, and I didn't end up going to see it because I wanted to wait and see it with my wife, but we just never got the chance to go see it together. So, missed it there. But I've read the book as well. They're pretty different the book and the show, but they're both pretty good. But I have not seen, like, I tried to watch that. I think it was Sci-Fi Channel or somebody did a thing called like Tin Man a while back, where they're like, the Tin Man's an outlaw, and it's like the future past. And there's opium dens or something. I lost interest real quick. But yeah, it's just constantly stuff like that. I think there's another one of those that came out in recent memory too, but I can't recall exactly what it was. I know they've used the characters on that show once upon a time, because they use every character under the sun in that show, which I guess is part of its appeal. I never got into it, but I can understand where people would like it. You know, not putting it down. But as far as this comic goes, we're deep in the inking, deep in the ink, inside the paint. Well, we're not inside the paint. That would be probably color. I'm trying to make a sports analogy, and I'm not that big into sports, so it didn't really come off well. Any comic you see me draw with Baxter, where I'm like trying to freehand, his body is just circles. You know, I don't know whether you can freehand circles like just perfectly, but for me, it takes a bunch of different tries at it just to get it the way exactly I want it. Not that that's a perfect circle. He's not supposed to be perfectly circular, but he is a circle shape, and it can, depending on the way your hand moves, it can really look terrible. Especially for me, like if I'm just holding a pencil or a pen, like my hand tends to shake, and so sometimes you'll see me draw a line several times over and over and over again. That's because I had a little shake in there somewhere, and just jagged out that line a little bit. There's especially, I'm trying to think, I think it was a comic I just did a couple nights ago. I was working on. I think I went over one of Reggie's eyes like 20 or 30 times while doing it, which will show up in the tape, you know, when they play these back. Reggie's weird balled up fist. I'm really, really considering giving Reggie 5 fingers. The more I draw his hands and different things, like I drew him holding a phone the other day, and holding it up to the side of his, it was like a 2 phone situation. So there's one he was holding to the side of his head, and that one turned out okay. Like the hand didn't look too awkward, but then I had him holding another phone in his other hand, and it looked a little weird. And maybe it's just like I have on and off days for drawing hands, and there's certain positions drawing a hand in looks goofier when I do it. So it may have been that. But I wasn't a huge fan of it. And this was like just after I did the Ninja Gaiden comic I did, or Gaiden. I'm sure I'm butchering that word, and it's out of my ignorance. I'm not telling other people to say it the way I say it. I'm just, saying it the way I used to say it as a scrappy kid from the South. It'd be like, Ninja Gaiden, man. It's that Ninja Gaiden. I'm sure that's not the way you say it. I think it's like Gaiden. I think. But again, I could be completely wrong. There could be a third way of saying it that I don't know. And I could be destroying these words. But yeah, drawing the hands in that comic. For some reason, like having the 5 fingers, I used to think made it harder. Now I think it actually makes it easier to draw a hand to have 5 fingers, because the proportions are easier on me. So, again, I think I've brought this up several times, but I may in the future switch over to doing a 5-fingered Reggie, and I may or may not comment about it in the comic at some point. So, like, yeah, that little 3-finger hand, not a huge deal. I think it might be the angle looking at it. But I think Reggie in this comic sometimes doesn't turn out exactly the same in every panel. So I think in this third panel he looks a little better. His head might need to be scaled down a little bit. But these are all things you can go back and nitpick your work to death once you've done it. There's certainly stuff in the first and second year that I just go back and I'm like, oh boy, whoo. Again, the fine green couch. It's been making some more appearances lately. Speaking of appearances, I look back through the character tags in my comic, and there are granted maybe like a couple in the first month or so that I haven't tagged yet, so these numbers are not extremely accurate. But I think Reggie has shown up in like 150 something of my little over 300 comics. So I've made a lot of jokes just not featuring him or about other things like games or movies and things like that he just didn't get to take a part in. I think Baxter and Gilbert, respectively, were each in like 110. Because typically, I haven't drawn a whole lot with Baxter by himself. Gilbert the dog has been in a few solo comics where he's with Rodney the Rotten Raccoon, or doing weird stuff like interviewing Captain Falcon. But and Reggie's certainly been in his fair share of solo comics. But I find it hard pressed to think. I don't think I've put Baxter in any solo stuff, and I may have to change that coming up. Do a couple of Baxter single shots. We're deep in the paint, the coloring process. Man, it was an early morning for me today, so my voice is extra gravelly. Give me some extra unearned gravitas. Drawing a little carpet in the border there. Gosh. It's like I can remember the name for that little piece of wood that runs across the bottom of your wall anytime except for when I'm trying to make reference to it in one of these videos. And then I'm like, the woody thingy piece? The tiny piece to deal? The runner? It's not called a runner. Baseboards. That's it. It's a baseboard. Nailed it. All that other stuff before where I was acting like an idiot who couldn't remember what it was called, I was just vamping. That's what that was. It was me making suspense. I knew it the whole time. Absolutely knew it. Putting these little shadows in. Ding, 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 ding. Maybe that'll be the RGBros theme song. Definitely got to get some saxophone action in there. Make it like a early 90s or late 80s sitcom theme. The RGBros and the friends for life living together. There you go. I'm going to lay down that track later. It's just going to be that. Look for that to be the theme to these videos later. I think I changed up this dialogue a little bit as we were going along. I also went back and forth between calling it Wizard of Oz and The Wizard of Oz. Some people like to put the "the" in there. Some people like to be lazy like me and keep it out sometimes. Yeah, here we are creeping down to the final minute of the video. So, as always, thank you all very much for sticking with me, listening to me ramble on. And thanks to all the folks on Patreon who are making all this possible. You're making dreams come true. I'm making my own musical today. But yeah, I'll catch you guys and gals and everybody on Saturday. We're going to go over another one. Next one's going to be like the third Star Wars comic I made in January. So that'll be a fun one. But I'm going to go ahead and sign off and let you enjoy the rest of this video in silence. So everybody be quiet. See you later.